Hello.
Hi there, Laurie.
How are you, Alison Duke?
I'm fine.
It's so good to see you in this space. Oh my goodness. What a world, huh? What a time
Yes,
to be alive.
yes. Well, I want to just thank you for inviting me to do this. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited about the program, and I just happy to be here with you tonight.
Thank you. I'm excited too. I'm a first timer, but it's been fun so far. It's hard not seeing the audience and not being able to engage in that way, but we're going to do our best. And so, as you know, we've just watched three short films. Promise Me, your film being the third. But as the first two films were playing, folks were asking questions, posing wonderful insights, and some of those have been made available to me. So before we get into Promise Me, I'm going to maybe tackle a few of these. There's no right way to do this because this is everyone's first time. So let's see how this works. Because I don't know, Alison, I don't think you've seen the other two films, right?
No, not yet. I was
Okay.
trying to do it today, but my schedule is so crazy. But I'm hoping to do that on the weekend if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
didn't expect that you would have done that. I just didn't want to leave you out of the conversation in case there was something you wanted to add. So there's one question here. I'm not sure who asked it, but it was a question about, there's one question on the screen. Let me tackle this one first from Damali Kai Little. I think this was posed on Twitter. With this grandparent-child duo. Oh, sorry. Her name is Damali Kai Little White. Sorry. This grandparent-grandchild duo is so sweet. Grandparents can be so powerful and can play such a significant role in family for parents, the kids, and the community. Yeah, Damali, there's definitely, when I talked at the beginning, at the outset of this, about the wide scope or the space I was making for this definition of mother, I was thinking about the grandmothers. I was thinking about the aunties. I was thinking about the women who had no blood relation to me growing up, who I called auntie. I was thinking about the church ladies and the teachers, and these are the people who often step in and fill the gaps that are left by you know any number of reasons. Some of those forces that we talked about at the beginning as well, the things that that really put pressure and stress on the fabric of family. Grandmothers are often there to step in. So it was a real beautiful relationship to witness. There's something about that skipping the generation, and being and getting a chance to witness how this older generation is relating to the younger generation in this three generation story. But the mother's absent in a lot of ways from the film, and we get to see we're plopped right down in the middle of this relationship between a grandmother and her granddaughter. I found it so beautiful too that in the midst of Alison, this film, it's about a woman named Oring who is losing her memory, and she's trying to teach her granddaughter native Tagalog language, and does a lot of reading to her and telling them stories. But as these words, her own words, are starting to slip away, we see what that's doing for her and how scary it is. But there's this beautiful moment at the end where the granddaughter is sort of it's clear that the seeds that have been planted in her by grandmother are starting to take root, and that this child is gaining some courage and some agency. And even though there's a lot of tension, I think Damali on Twitter also said something to the effect of, just being on the edge, wondering what's going to happen with this family, because we know in situations like this that families can often be torn apart. Mental illness, absence of a parent. So even despite all that, you get the sense that this child is going to be okay, that she's been emboldened and empowered by her grandmother's presence in her life. Another comment.
That's just such a beautiful story, Laurie. I just wanted to add, I don't know if you've been reading the news about what's happening with COVID in Indigenous communities, and a lot of the elders are passing. And so I read an article the other day about, this loss of all this history and knowledge and wisdom. So you can imagine like films like these are really touching on things that are actually happening. It's a different form, but things that are happening in communities.
Absolutely. And what's the African proverb that when an elder dies, a library burns? There's something really, well, it's this instinct in us to survive and to thrive, and to persist. And that's what gets me so, that's what has drawn me to this topic of mothering, because I think it's an essence that can be embodied in a lot of different relationships. And there's just something very powerful and subversive about it, because despite the ravages of COVID, despite the ravages of all these societal inequities, inequalities, and things like that, there's this this persistence, this through line, that joins generations of people, often through the mother line. Ikwe, there was such a sense of intimacy. Yeah, I love this question, Wendy, or this comment. How does intimacy help bridge generations? When I first read this comment, what I thought of with Ikwe was how that intimacy was created. And again, Alison, you haven't seen it, but it's this experimental film that involves woman, Ikwe, hearing the voice of her grandmother Moon. And it's experimental in the sense that a lot of abstract images and extreme close-ups are used. And what I feel, for me, what really created the intimacy was the sound, and just how close that voice felt to me, the voice of Grandma Moon. So that was my first thought when I read that word intimacy, Wendy, in your, and this is where we're limited, because I would love to hear how you thought intimacy was achieved, or how the audience felt that was achieved in this film. But how does intimacy help bridge generations? I mean, it's the invisible glue that holds relationships together. You have to be vulnerable to be intimate, and one generation, a younger generation that's looking up to an older generation for guidance, is in a vulnerable place, because that wisdom, like you just said, Alison, it goes with our elders if we don't tap into it. And so there's a real humbling, and a real vulnerability, I feel, in that, in sitting at the feet of an elder and listening, and listening to the stories. And so when we're admonished by the woman in the film to, what are her exact words? I don't want to mess it up, but to listen. What does she say here? Let me go to my notes. It has never been more important to hear our grandmother's stories. That to me is a call, and it's a very, it has a little tinge of a warning. It's like now or never. But this is where this is our duty, I think, is to listen and to hear. And to preserve the voices and the stories of our elders. Wendy here says, I think it draws spirit and body closer. And yes, vulnerability is so relevant. Yeah, I agree that the film, again, because there was the voice and movement, the performer, the Ikwe in the film, is dancing and moving through space. And so there's a real sense of that unity between body, mind, and spirit, you know, in the form of the grandmother. Thank you so much for those comments, everyone. Okay, well, we may circle back to some other questions related to those other films, but like we have the Alison Duke here, and this is such a rare, you know, honor and pleasure to be able to speak with the filmmaker. This is what we miss, not being able to go to film festivals. And so I'm going to do a little bio read for Alison, and then we're going to talk a little bit about her profoundly powerful film, Promise Me. So Alison is a founding partner of Oya Media Group. She's known as Goldie for her blonde dresses. And she's a consummate storyteller in every sense of the word. Duke is known for narrating dynamic stories that illuminate history, document the present, push the culture forward, and captivate audiences of all ages. In 2019, Alison Duke produced and co-wrote Mr. Jane and Finch, CBC POV documentary. The film won 2 2020 Canadian Screen Awards, the Donald Britton Award for Best Social Political Documentary, and Best Writing for a Documentary. She directed Cool Black North, a 2-hour TV documentary for Rogers City TV, which is currently touring American film festivals. In 2020, her debut short, Promise Me, which you all just had the pleasure and honor of viewing, inspired by her social justice documentary, The Woman I Have Become, made in 2008. Promise Me won the Winston Malcolm Award for Best Canadian Film at the Afro Prairie Film Festival, Best Short at the Columbus Black International Film Festival, and the Standout Writing Award at the Real World Film Festival. Alison is in year 3 of the Oya Emerging Filmmakers Program, formerly known as the Black Youth Pathway to Industry. This is a 3-year employment initiative that Alison kickstarted to support young Black professionals' access to essential training, mentors, paid internships, networks, and film industry spaces. She received the 2019 WIFT Crystal Award. I was there for that presentation. It was a beautiful day for mentorship of young filmmakers. And in the spirit of you know, full like transparency, Alison is also currently producing my feature-length documentary. It will be my first feature-length documentary, Mothering in the Movement. And this is a collaboration that has been, continues to be beautifully enriching and exciting. So let's welcome Alison Duke to our discussion formally. Yay!
Thank you again for having me here. That's great.
Nice. Well, yeah, so we already have some questions coming in for Alison about, for you, Alison, about Promise Me. I want to ask Alison what prompted her to create Promise Me. Did she have a personal connection to the story? So that just so happens to be what I was going to ask you about, because I do happen to know a little bit about that personal connection. Can you tell us, talk about your history of working in the world of HIV/AIDS and how you've, your personal connection to the story and how you continue to use storytelling to address health inequities and stigma faced by African and Caribbean women in general?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Well, you know, it's been a journey in the film industry, working as a producer and director, and you know, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next when the industry kind of changed in 2008. There was a big, like, you know, downturn in the Canadian film industry, and I thought, you know, why not reach out more to community groups and nonprofits and see if they need to tell their own stories. So I was actually approached by a health organization called Women's Health in Women's Hands. It was back in like 2006, 2007. And they were looking for someone to do make a film about 8 African and Caribbean and Black women living in Toronto with HIV. They were a community health center, and they had a women's group that they started with Black women living with HIV. And I think at the time they had, you know, maybe 200 women in that group. And it just sort of like ballooned very fast, that group, and to the 200. And they realized that those people in the group were experiencing some really I guess, terrible things in Toronto from various industries and various social, kind of groups. And one of the sort of like industries that was kind of oppressing them the most was the healthcare industry. Doctors, staff, nurses, facilities that they would go for treatment and care. And so Women's Health and Women's Hands really, forward thinking, they said, well, why don't we make a documentary to see what's the root of the problem? Follow 8 women and see what their issues are. And so Promise Me came out of that film. There was one woman named Rhonda, which you could see at the end of the film. This story is inspired by something that she experienced. I just remember, well, I'll just explain a little bit about her situation. She was one of the first women, Black women in Toronto, who was fighting on the front line for change for women living with HIV. And she had HIV for many years, like over 20 years. And, she had her ups and downs with the medication. It was hard on her. And, for someone who, was on the front line, even when it comes to like prescription, like drugs and drug medications to, help her, and to help medical research, she was doing that. She was volunteering for that kind of thing. And anyways, everything took a toll on her, and to the point where she got really, really ill and developed AIDS and became sick, and her children became her caregivers. And so
she had 2 girls, right?
She had 2 girls. And so I combined the story, but there's parts of Promise Me that's based on a lot of different women that live with HIV. But this is true. Rhonda's children were apprehended by child welfare. And when we were about to put out the film, child welfare contacted us, myself and Women's Health and Women's Hands, and they wanted to censor the film. They wanted me to remove all aspects of the apprehension. They wanted to, not show the love and the care that between mother and the daughters. They were really, really heavy-handed in the rollout of this film because Rhonda had passed away and the children had become crown wards. And so, I was facing censorship. And so this film from 2007, when it was first released, which became a huge hit in the industry, in the circle of HIV, it went to UNAIDS. It traveled all over the world. It was translated in 8 different languages. I felt like a hole in my heart because, Rhonda really wanted me to tell the story about what happened, and I wasn't able to. And I remember when they were apprehended that night, she called me over to her house and she could bring your camera. And I walked in and she was lying on the couch. So that's very symbolic in the story. And she told me the story, what happened to her that day and her family. And she said, I want you to tell the story no matter what. And she passed away a couple of weeks after. So for me, it was one, it was the censorship, but then also just the heaviness of the situation. Why is it that child welfare is apprehending her daughters because essentially they were missing school and, too many days of school, and the teacher, told child welfare, and the child welfare came into the situation. And I was thinking, what better life learning is there than to take care of someone who is not well, and that they may have limited time on this earth. School can't teach you any of that. So I just said, you know what? I need to tell the story. I need to get Rhonda's story out there and let them know what's happening to these women. And it was actually a worse situation what happened. can I just keep on going about what really happened that day?
Absolutely.
What happened with the apprehension? Rhonda went to the groceries with her children, and she came back in a cab, and there was a worker and a police officer there, and they wouldn't let the children even bring in the groceries to in the house properly. And so when I came to Rhonda that night, I saw the groceries right at the foot of the fridge, and most of it was melted, and meats and all that stuff. So I when I came in, I put some of it away, and some of it was no longer good, and it was just like, who does that?
What a visual that is. Like it's one of those things that cinematically can be very powerful. Those moments where you frame just something unexpected, like melting groceries. Like it says so much about the intrusion. It says so much about the interruption of their everyday lives, right? Like it's I felt like there were moments in Promise Me that did that. Like at almost every frame there was something like that was just visually representative of the weight of this disease, and just the weight of society and the system and the institution. There's a question here about Charlie, your protagonist in the film. Again, this is something that I definitely wanted to ask you about, because I just feel like you did such a brilliant job of painting, portraying the full humanity of this child, this character. There's a lot of research that points out the adultification of Black children that happens in institutions. This well-established tendency for non-Black people to assume Black children are older than they actually are. This is a painful reality. As a teacher, I see it. And I know that I'm part of an institution that, probably a lot of it, unconscious, but, it has a lot of implicit bias when it comes to Black children. Black kids get suspended more. They get stiffer punishments for the same infractions committed by their white counterparts. This phenomenon has real consequences for Black children, particularly in schools. And so we have this situation where Charlie is thrust into an adult role, right? She perhaps prematurely, she's in the position of mothering her mother, and yet you have moments where she's still a child. And those were some of my favorite moments. And so I just want to talk or ask you about how you went about writing that, because if it's not on the page, I know it doesn't end up magically in front of the camera, or maybe it might, maybe they're happy accidents, I'm not sure. But how did you build that character, develop that character in the writing process, or in the way you worked with the young actor in the direction?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is the fact that I just wanted people to always think about what it would be like to care for a Black child. We always I think we tend to look at Black people as caring for everybody else. But what would it look like to care for a Black child who is loving, who is caring for her mom? And what would it take to do that? Like, there's so many opportunities for, people to step in and really do something that would be helpful to Charlie, but it was always under whatever they wanted to do was more punitive, right? They didn't want to. Helping meant, breaking her heart, destroying her family. It never was thought of like, oh, let me just go get a bag of groceries for Charlie. Let me look in the fridge and see if they need anything. Let me, go and see her mom Like, why can't the principal just go and knock on the door and see how they're doing? It was always, the other way, like the punitive way of being. And so I wanted to question that. And then for the sort of like the recreations, or the flashbacks, I did a lot of work around Carl Jung, theories of dream theories, and feminist theories of dreams and dreamscapes, and also Afro or African spirituality, and the tension between something that is sort of like a vision versus something that happened in the past, and how they're connected, and how time is connected. And I really thought about that. It just sounds really complicated, but I was studying that for like a year. I remember I have pages and pages of just like notes about it, because I didn't want to have a flashback, but I wanted it to be meaningful. And then what it came down to is the fact that I remember all the stories that I worked with the women living with HIV. And I remember how they told me all these stories about love, and how, they love their children, you can see their children loving them. They talk about, loving their partners, and their partners loving them. And I really wanted to show that even though that these women are living with HIV and they're facing so much stigma and discrimination, that they are loved and people love them. And, we don't see that in film, the love of people who have HIV. You don't really see it in this way, especially Black women. So I wanted to make sure that we got that clear, and that they did have a history. They have a past, and they're not just defined by their illness.
Yeah. This is beautiful. Tracy Castonguay Klinkhammer. Hi, Tracy. Alison, you're such a gifted storyteller. You've created a film that shines a light on how broken the system is. I'm just getting emotional reading this. It's so clear from the film that with the right support, the story would have had a different ending. It's heartbreaking, and the story needs to be told. Wow. Thank you so much for that, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
There are a few things that you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on. You were talking about the ways that helpers, the small, the practical things that helpers do, and I couldn't help but just marvel at how crafty hinderers are. How subtle. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but the haters, the hinderers, the people who get in the way, there are so many tricks up their sleeve, and whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously, it baffles my mind. You packed so much in. I mean, the first 5 minutes alone, let me just go through my little survey of our friend from CAS. Okay. So the first 5 minutes, we see horrifying instances of this agent of the state abusing her position, so using her authority as a weapon, intimidation, judgment, guilt tripping, questioning, condescension, scolding, flipping through official papers and records like, I'm the I don't know, I'm the official, I'm holding the official book of good and bad deeds. All of this amounts to this weaponizing of authority, like I've already said. And I don't have to ask how common this is. I suspect it's very common, because that just would be a naive question, right? But in your research, did you come across any collective efforts to name these things? Are there? And I suspect organizations like Women's Health and Women's Hands and other NGOs are probably on the forefront of this, naming these behaviors. And, it's like we can't eliminate them until they're named, right? So I don't know. You've already kind of touched on your research, but.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right term, but we talk about hyper surveillance of Black women and families living with HIV. Once the true story is, once the teacher found out that, this woman, Rhonda, had HIV through her children, because they said something, oh, my mom, or they heard something, they were surveilled, they were under surveillance, they were watched more, everything was scrutinized more. You know, if you go into someone's home and they don't have, and they're sick and they don't have HIV, you know, they're treated differently. If she had cancer, for example, she may have been treated differently. But there's something about HIV and Black people, and because there's a whole structure, the criminal justice system also criminalizes people living with HIV if they don't disclose their status in certain situations. Right. It's just hyper surveillance, hyper surveillance of them, and so that's what it is. Mm-hmm. So they might sneeze, and you just say, you know, it's call the cops, and somebody else sneezes, and it's like, oh, here, have a Kleenex. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the situation. Yeah.
The performances in this film were just phenomenal. How did you find your actors?
Well, yeah. Well, Angie Reed, who played the childcare worker, she was just an amazing villain. Like, you just hated her. Like, I just said, you know, I'm sorry. And she's such the nicest person, and she's funny, and she's talkative, and she's not that person whatsoever. But she came late to the game. She was actually added because I had another actress who had to drop out. And so Angie kind of basically walked into the role. Olunike Adelele, she came to me. I was somewhere, and she wanted to meet, and we talked, and I said, I think I have a role for you, just based on her personality and how open she was to just.
She played the mother, right?
Yeah, she played the mother, and she's just extraordinary. Like, she's on Netflix series. She's like she's an actor that's out there working.
Yeah, she's
professionally. I can't even remember all her credits, but she's on a show right now. Anyways, she's just amazing. And when she said that, I'm going to do this, she just stepped into it. And then finding Charlie, who was played by Brianna Morrison. Yeah, she was like the last person we found. Like, we were trying to find Charlie. It took us a long time. I thought I had a Charlie, and then I didn't. And then I think it was like maybe a month before the shoot, we found her. And Olunike, she just took her under her wings, and just said, and they were just bonding and had their own energy going. And Alana, I always wanted to work with Alana Bridgewater, who played the teacher. I wanted the teacher to be Black because I wanted to show that, just because someone is of the race of the person, or think that they're going to be an ally, the systemic oppression is so great. Usually they can't do anything. And I wanted to show that, right? And then the teacher, so the principal, Wyatt Lamoureux, he's just an amazing guy too. He's just the most sweetest guy. And he worked with me, and he's a working actor as well. And I just said, you just have to be a jerk. You just have to be. And he goes, and he brought an idea. He goes, you know what? I'm a principal who's burnt out. I'm on my way out. I'm just doing it every day, going through the motions. And I said, yes, with a tinge of racism on top. And then he took that into the role. But it was just really great working with.
What a combination.
Yeah. It's a great combination. Yeah.
Wow. And yeah, I could say a lot about that whole environment, being a Black educator. It's so important to self-reflect, and to it's so complex, but to try to see how you may be being used by the system, in unconsciously, and how you may be complicit. And I thought that was such a bold and courageous choice to cast the teacher as a Black woman, because the first time you meet her, you're kind of like, yo, what's going on, sister? Why are you acting like I didn't get the vibe? You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, yeah, it did everything you wanted it to do. And you saw her, even though she, Len didn't have a lot of screen time compared to the other characters, you saw her go through some growth, which again is remarkable in a short film where a tertiary character actually has an arc. That's pretty remarkable, Alison. That's why you won all the awards.
Oh.
That's why you won all the awards for writing.
Well,
Because it's not easy to do.
Well, I think it's just doing a lot of making a lot of films about social issues especially with community groups. I kind of know these people. I kind of met these people who are, there's either stuck in the middle of an issue, or they know of something, or they've been through it. And, there's always a way of thinking about where people are in the struggle or in the issue and why they're acting a certain way. I spend a lot of time thinking about that when it comes to characters, like where people are and why they're acting this way, and what would make them grow, even just an inch, not just change the world, but just like, okay, an inch, because the issue is still there, right? Systemic racism is still there, so what is movement in this space? Yeah, I think about that a lot.
It's so interesting that this was your first dramatic film. Like, you lived in the world of documentary since the early 90s, mid 90s.
Late 2000s.
2000s? Okay, fine. I read a bio that said mid 90s, music videos. I guess we're going to music videos. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Okay. But where was I going with that? Yeah, I guess when it comes to studying the human condition and understanding what makes people tick and what makes people, I guess you've learned a lot. Like, talk about how documentary filmmaking has informed your dramatic filmmaking, or vice versa. I wonder how those two things connect.
Well, Laurie, just, making the film that we're making together, like how much research you go into just that one documentary, right? Mm-hmm. I've probably made, I think it's a dozen documentaries including collaborations, even more than that, I think. And each of those documentaries, I approach it as I know nothing. And by the end of it, I want to be at least an expert in that subject matter, not only about the topics, but just about the people who are impacted by the issue. Mm-hmm. So it's all of that. It's like reading like a lot of books, but it's like making the films about the issue. And, I thought about that the other day, and I was like, wow, this is, because I'm conflicted, this is my first drama, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to be, what am I going to be like as a dramatic director, dramatic filmmaker? And all the work that I did before, is that a waste, or is that part of what I'm going to bring to it? And I came to the conclusion, like, no, it's like those hours spent making those films, learning about those people's stories, learning about the issues in a very, minutia kind of way, microscopic way. That's really helpful to the kind of work I'll probably be making in the future, even when it comes to what they're saying, the dialogue, or yes. The conflicts within the dialogue, how to layer it and figure out what I want to say. No, I think, it's that's all amazing. Like, yeah.
That's really beautiful. I think that is absolutely true, that, it probably works both ways, but I can see there being so much more that you can bring from the documentary world into that serves the narrative. Because at the end of the day, we want to watch, even when it's fiction, we want to feel like we know those people. We want to feel like these are, individuals. I think it was Toni Morrison who said that, her characters, I don't want to misquote, maybe it's Alice Walker. It's one of our amazing,
our greats, our queens, right?
Yeah, one of our greats said that when she's developing her characters for her books, she expects to see them at the grocery store. Like, that's how real they become for her. And she knows every aspect of them. And so, yeah, I think I hope we see more dramatic work from you in the future. I hope you keep making docs because, you know, like I want to get my doc made.
No, your doc is getting made. Don't worry. You are making your doc. You're making it.
No.
Yeah.
I know, right? It's so exciting. But yeah, I mean, I promise me, it could have been a feature, right? And I want to see more. So, Damali, as creators, how does this expand in your upcoming documentary about mothering?
Oh,
wow, what a great question. Sarah, you're on the ball here, putting these relevant questions. Yeah, it's, you know, so far the experience has been, well, Alison's already alluded to it. There's been a whole lot of research involved in telling the story of this one person. We started out with more moms, you know, who we were sort of following and getting to know. And these are women who've become friends of mine in the community. But one of the things that I'm learning and that I've learned in working with Alison for these past few years in development is just, you know, the importance of tapping into the active story, the thing that is propelling your you know, your main person, your main participant, your main documentary participant, propelling them forward, forcing them to make decisions, and in those decisions, character is revealed. Like, these are all things that apply to dramatic films as well as documentary, and it's been a masterclass being able to work with you and Gaddy and all of the Oya people to you know, help lay the groundwork for this story. So I'm super excited. I'm still learning every day.
But you also have some really interesting ideas about mothering that you're bringing to the table. And yeah, I'm just wondering now, like, you know, how are you thinking about the story, like what you want to show in terms of, say, you want to talk about who, like Stacey Ann, and you want to talk about it a little bit? Why not talk about your?
Why not? I mean, she's an amazingly complex and powerful and compelling person, first and foremost. Like, this is her life that she's written a lot about. For those of you who don't know, Mothering the Movement is about Stacey Ann Chin. She's a popular and outspoken spoken word poet living in Brooklyn, originally from Jamaica. And she is in the midst of raising this, how do I describe Zuri Chin? I mean, she just turned 9 yesterday. I got a phone call from her and sang her a happy birthday on the phone. She's this 9-year-old open heart. Like, I keep hearing this expression lately. I've been hearing this expression. I think it's Brene Brown who talks about like a soft belly and a strong back. And that's how I like a soft front and a strong back. Zuri is just this beautiful human being. And what has amazed me about this story is just how, well, first of all, like Stacey Ann is managing, she's in the midst of it, is managing to raise this child without having had the best model for motherhood in her life. When she was less than 3 months old, her mother left Jamaica and she didn't see her for another 25, 30 years. So 20 years or so. So yeah, this is a story about Stacey Ann trying to reconnect and reconcile with her mom, who she has since found, and is, you know, in the process of developing that relationship, while at the same time wanting to protect her daughter from, you know, all the ills and the things that exist out in society. She's an activist, so she's always wearing that hat as well. It's a really beautiful and layered story about that mothering essence that we've been talking about all night. That you know, in spite of all the pressures and all the obstacles, finds a way out of no way. You know. And having said that, we're still very mindful. Alison and I have talked a lot about being mindful of those tropes that exist around Black women, and being careful not to fall into the trap of like, we're stoic and strong and we can, you know, do everything. That superwoman trope is really dangerous. And so Stacey Ann's life and her experience is an exploration of all of that. So yeah, Wendy.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to read the next question, but what were you going to say? She's also.
No. Yeah, no, it's going into the next question anyway.
Okay.
So.
As a mom myself, I'm curious about both of your thoughts on mothering. What makes a radical mother?
I was just going to say, in terms of like Stacey Ann, the character, well, not the character, the person you're following, she's a lesbian, poet, feminist, activist, and she's raising her child woke. She's not like hiding things from her child. They have like a YouTube kind of like
series,
right, with them talking about social justice issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fascinating. I don't think, in my generation, I don't think parents would have thought of doing that. You got the talk, but Zuri knows about complex systemic issues.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. If you go to YouTube and you type in living room protest, you'll see this whole time, like chronology of Zuri, like at the age of 3 to the age of 9, where they are tackling issues that, like Alison said, that are of social consequence. And like, I don't think Stacey Ann realizes, well, perhaps she does. She's such a beacon and such a great resource for so many people who mother. And it's not, like I said in the opening, Alison, I was saying to the audience that when I think about mothering, I'm talking about anybody who mothers, regardless of race, gender identity, biological connection or not. That's not really being considered when I talk about mothers. In fact, I've seen the word mother in a number of the books that I've read, particularly Revolutionary Mothering by Alexis Gumbs. It's a compilation of essays. Mother is written with the M/OTHER to sort of signal this idea that there are many others who are involved in this act of nurturing. And so, like, what makes a mother radical? Well, again, to quote Angela Davis, and that radical is simply pulling things up at the root, grasping things by the root. I think there's so much upheaval. There's so much work. Stacey Ann and I talk about this a lot too in our conversations, like labor. There's so much labor involved in working, and a lot of it is unpaid and a lot of it is unseen. But it's laborious. It's like, if we're talking about this root analogy in gardening, it's like gardening. That's work. Of course, it's, it renders beauty, and but it takes diligence and it takes work, and it takes, in some cases, confronting, the ugliest parts of society. I think about some of the moms who come into schools and are being intimidated by school officials or CAS workers, and have to dig down and find the resolve to, like Yolanda in the film, get out. She the way she says that in that moment, I watched it a couple times because how do I say her name? Olunike?
Olunike, yeah.
She pulls from somewhere deep down for that get out. And it is powerful. And so when I think about radical mothers, I think about that. And I also think about the quiet ways that they're able to resist. I think about the way that, when you are affirming a Black child who is receiving messages from everywhere else that they're not enough. When you take the time to look that child in the eye and affirm them, you're doing revolutionary work, in my opinion. You're doing radical work. And as a teacher, I don't take that responsibility lightly. You know, there are moments where you can just whisper in the ear of a child that they're enough. And to me, that's a radical move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also feel like, you know, just questioning, don't go through that whole, you know, being the 1950s, 1960s type mom, right? You know, like, not to say that you can't be a stay-at-home mom, but just like question everything, you know,
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy, colonialism, you know, just, you know, try to be a force, because we have to change the world, because the world right now, it's not fair for a lot of people. And obviously, from the environment to looking at how people are able to live, because, you know, and not live because they don't have enough money. We have to change the way society is for
Mm-hmm.
the next generation. So I think it's just, you know, stepping in that role as, you know, being activists.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, when I think about the transfer of knowledge and the empowering that's happening in young people by those who mother, and males. The question here about what role do males play in that? I mean, again, like some of my most cherished mother figures were my male coaches. You know, like they had this. This quality that really transcends gender identity, you know. So I'm thinking about a lot of those people as well, who are the nurturers. But when you think about how scary that must be to the establishment, you know, I just every now and then I have this vision of just like millions of little Zuris rising up as they get older, right? She's getting close to the double digits, and she's going to be in like high school soon, and then it's going to be college or university. And like, if I was interested in maintaining the status quo, that would scare the out of me, right? And so that to me is a radical thing as well. This idea that, you know, there's a way of parenting that and it's not about putting undue pressure on these kids to save the world, you know, like,
Yeah.
I believe children are the future. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. But, you know, it's really about empowering them and walking alongside them in this, you know, Stacey Ann puts it best when she says in an interview, you know, I want to involve Zuri in the, how does she say it? I have to involve her in the formation of the world that we're creating. Like, I want her to be a participant in it. I said it much less eloquently than she did. She's the spoken word poet. But yeah, it's definitely something that is a theme that like obviously gets me jazzed. And I think that's why I selected this as the first theme of our film school series. And we're just being asked to check, 25 minutes left, that's it. All right, there's one question here. Where do you see promising screening?
There's 5 minutes left?
Yeah.
Oh,
this
okay.
Is the last question.
Okay, promise me. Yeah, we're getting a lot of you know, offers for distribution and whatnot. So just keep on following us at on Instagram, Promise Me Short, or you can go to Media Group and you know, just log in and say, hey, you're interested in the next screening. Like, thankfully, there's a lot of advocacy on having screenings like this. So if you let me know that you're interested, or if you follow us on Instagram, we can let you know when the next free screening is, right, for you. Yeah, but I think there'll be more in 2021.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I enjoyed this.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
And I just noticed in the classrooms. Yes, we are selling them to schools now. So if you are part of a university, college, or high school, and you want this at your school, just send us a message through Oya Media Group, and we will talk to whoever we need to talk to at your school to make sure that they get it.
Awesome. Alison, can you put in the chat for Sarah, maybe if you can put it up on the screen, the best way to contact Oya? Would it be through the social media or an email or?
Email. I'll just put it. No, I don't know how to chat anymore. Comment.
In our private chat. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, Sarah can do it. Okay.
Yeah, that would, I would definitely love to screen this for my students. I think it would be appropriate for middle school students and up, definitely.
Yeah, my daughter's 8, and she was sort of like my story editor. And then she goes, "This is sad, mommy, but I really feel, I understand it, and I think this is important. People need to see it."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I'm just looking at some of the comments on the YouTube feed. This has been so fantastic, everyone. Thank you so much for this beautiful screening and talk. I look forward to seeing Weathering the Movement. Much love. Thanks, Liz. Much love and appreciation to you both. That's Liz Irarico from Toronto. It's been so lovely to be joined here by friends and family and new friends from across this country. So I just want to thank you all so much. I want to thank Wendy Pert from Regina Public Library and Sarah Pittman from the Regina Public Library and Alyssa Farron from the Dunlop Art Gallery for making these connections and bringing me on board to do this. We're going to have another 2 sessions. I get the honor of doing this 2 more times in February and then again in March with a different theme, different films, and a different guest for our Q&A. Alison, good bomb.
Thank you for having me on. This is so amazing, just chatting about it. And I love the energy of the theme. And thank you so much, everyone behind the scenes too. Sarah, you were really amazing to work with. But thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess that's it, film school students. Let's cut for now, and we'll hopefully see you back February 7th, I believe is the date. You'll hear all kinds of lead up to that next session. February 4th. Oh, good. I guess I had that wrong. I better make sure I show up on the 4th and not the 7th. All right, big love to everybody. Take care. Have a good night. Bye.